Hey everybody, welcome into the next edition of the Sports Phanatic News Sportscast as we're going to bring you up to date with the latest and the greatest in the NFL, NHL, NBA, and MLB as I am joined by the great Steel Flyers. I am Joe Borek, aka Pro Joe, and let's get right into it. But first, how you doing today, Steel?
Oh man, I'll tell you what, I'm doing great, man. I can't wait to get into it. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, man, and a short time to get there. So let's dive right into it, my man, for sure, for sure. Ready to go.
Yeah, well, we got the NFL that has, which is your second favorite league, I believe, to the NHL, correct?
Well, close first.
Yeah,
It's a
well,
tie. It's a
you
tie.
got the NFL that extended its season by one game to 17 and shortened its preseason to 3 games. The preseason going to 3 games makes a lot of sense just because you always have that one game nobody plays in where you just play all the backups
Okay,
and all
okay,
of them in.
okay.
But
Okay. Let me just dispel something right now. Yes, the starters don't play, but the guys that do play that game are like the fourth, fifth, sixth string guys that are looking to make a roster on another team. So, yes, it's not very important for the starters per se, but it's very important for the rest of the league because that gets you tape. That gets you seen. That gets you out there. You know what I'm saying? So just let's clear that little part right up.
I get that, but I think the preseason was always going to be shortened at a certain point. It
Oh,
always
yeah.
seemed
Yeah,
to
I
go
agree.
down 4 games where the one game is all just for fourth and fifth stringers, where the argument a lot of people will make is you had those previous weeks too to work your way up to being a third stringer or a second stringer and not having to be getting your tape just in that final game.
Right, 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 right.
Second last game because some teams flop the games
Yep.
depending on how they use their analytics and what they want to do there in the
Oh, yeah. No,
preseason.
no, no.
I
Obviously. Yeah,
think
yeah.
I think they really shortened it here, though. The reason they're shortening it now isn't the reason I thought they would shorten it, which would be more for the one game just didn't seem as important as the others, and they want to just move into the regular season quicker because that's what makes them their money. It's not like the preseason makes the NFL much of anything. So they would much rather have 3 games start the season quicker, especially now with one extra game. But the big reason it also seems like that's happening is because they think it replaces a bye, which having one less preseason game doesn't replace having an extra bye with one extra game. That's what a disconnect
Exactly.
I think is with what I think they're thinking. That's why I
Yeah.
don't think it's going to
No, I
work in
agree.
that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100% because look, every time you have to suit it up, okay, that means you have to spend time at the practice facility. That means you have to go to meetings, you have to go and practice and all that other stuff. Okay. A bye week means that you get to leave the facility, that you don't have to be there for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and for the most part have to report back on Thursday. So I don't understand this level of thinking that it's going to quote unquote replace a bye when a bye week is just that. You don't have to report to the facility. You don't have to be anywhere near anybody. You can stay if you want, but a lot of guys go home. A lot of guys go to see their families. You know, it's that break. It's that get out of Dodge for those couple of days to get that break. You know what I mean? So they don't. They're if just because they're making one less preseason games, that just makes the off season a little odd. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It makes sense though because the NFL's bread and butter is the regular season going into
Oh,
the
agreed.
playoffs, obviously,
Oh, yeah.
especially the playoffs. So adding an extra game there helps them, and then one less preseason game definitely helps their revenue. But it's definitely interesting just to see how they're doing it. Where I think they're just kind of pushing something down the road that's inevitable to happen where eventually I feel like you're going to have a second bye with a 17 game season and right now they would just rather not have it to kind of get through the season quicker and they'll just wait till somebody complains in order to probably put it in.
Okay, here's what I think's going on because of the collective bargaining, the CBA that was just recently signed, where it opened the door to allow for the 17th game. And there was no opposition when that was being voted on. There was no, hey, let's give them an extra bye week or none of that other stuff. Okay, all they did was leave the door open so they could extend it by one game. They're not going to get an extra bye unless it goes to another game. If it goes to 18, then they'll get the bye week, the extra bye week. Okay, but just going to 17, that's why they're not getting the bye. They're getting the one less preseason game. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's for now, though. We don't know how players and stuff is going to react over time with a 17-game season. And the players union has obviously complained about other things in the past. I'm saying down the line, I feel like it could get brought up again, and you might just be delaying the inevitable of eventually maybe 2 to 3 years down the road putting in a second one anyway.
You know, I think what's going to probably end up happening is that they're going to go to 17 games and see how it goes. And then if it goes okay and there's not a lot of injuries and everybody seems to kind of make money and whatever the case is, then I think they're going to keep it in. I think this is just a test run to see if they can do 17 games and see how it goes and see, you know, they shorten up the preseason, everything like that. Maybe I also agree that it's going to change, but I don't think it's going to change until we get to the next CBA, because it's going to have to be voted on by the players union to get that extra game and have that be those extra games and those extra bye weeks. That's gonna that's not just an ownership issue there. That's gonna have to go through the players union and all that stuff first, or as well. So I don't think you're gonna see. I don't think they're going to go to 18 games. I think they'll try the 17 games this year, see how it works. If it does well, which I think it will, because basically all they're doing is they're adding an extra regular season game into now. The season's going to be pushed into February now for sure. So you're not going to get the Super Bowl now until closer to the end of February now. So that's an extra month of football revenue. Yep. Where normally February, I mean, the beginning of February is the Super Bowl, and then that's it. Then you don't get anything until March 17th when the season opens.
The new season technically, opens,
Right. So,
I mean, I could see that. I just feel like for me, it might end up becoming more of a problem than we foresee right now. Just because the NFL is the league. That's the most up with hockey. Hockey and football are the most just contact. I feel like you might eventually have to implement a second bye week for one extended game, because I feel like having one less preseason game doesn't really imitate a bye week like we talked about.
Exactly. It's funny too. Key phrase here in this whole situation: owners vote to expand. Owners. Okay, you don't see the players coming out saying, "Yeah, let's play one more game." So, like I said, I have mixed reservations about this. Look, I'm all for more football. I'm all for that, but I'm also of the same ilk where look, I played, and you start getting past a certain period of time of playing the same sporting, trying to pick yourself up off the turf again, over and over again. Once you get past that 15th game, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're okay. And if you haven't had a bye week, or if you've only had one bye week, you know what I mean? I like I said, I'm all for seeing more football, but I'm all for keeping the guys safe and all for keeping them healthy. And it doesn't do you any good if that last game of the season is a bunch of games where Patrick Mahomes is sitting, or Lamar Jackson is sitting, or, Aaron Rodgers is sitting. What good is that doing you when the big names are not playing in those games?
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. I mean, I think I feel like the extra week is to make the league, like I said, more money, because and then the preseason makes them no money. The regular season makes them the second most money. And then obviously the postseason makes them their biggest bread and butter. Well, obviously the preseason makes them some money, but in equivalency, it makes them pretty much no money compared to the regular season and what the postseason makes them.
I'm also of the same question, too. Didn't the NFL just recently sign a new contract with Amazon?
Yes, they did.
Okay, and didn't that like massively increase the amount of money that's going in for the TV contracts? Which it significantly did. Okay. And now
Yeah.
Amazon is going to be the permanent home now of Thursday Night Football and whatever the case is. So that is a huge, giant revenue share that's now being dispersed amongst the NFL. And the owners seriously want to expand to one more game? You know,
Yeah,
every ownership gets the gate. That stadium money, all that money that they use, like they say they don't make any money during the preseason, which is garbage. Because I guarantee you that you have teams that have those followings, those stadiums are packed because that's the only games that regular people can see because those tickets are relatively affordable.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't mean you didn't make any money. It's just in retrospect, you make pretty much minuscule compared to your regular season input and your playoff input in the preseason because you're charging significantly less. Like you just said, where in the regular season, as your team improves, you charge better. For teams that stink, it might be closer because then you run more deals to have people keep coming. But for teams that are actually competitive, they have a much bigger share in the regular season, and then the postseason will be their biggest profits, I would think, in the preseason. It's just in retrospect.
Oh yeah. No, I think we're saying the same thing, just in a different way here. You know what I mean? I think we agree that this is kind of a money grab. It seems like it is to me, and to me that just seems a little bit selfish on the ownership part. That the fact that they just signed this big, huge, major deal with Amazon, and the fact that they're just trying to do this as a money grab because it's not going to benefit the players.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just a money grab. It's also you figure some bonuses. It does benefit the players in a sense because
they get some extra bonus money and
certain
a paycheck.
contractual obligations. You're more likely to reach them in a 17-game season than you are a 16 game because you have an extra game to reach those contractual bonuses and all that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. But for the most part,
in some sense, it helps.
Yeah. But for the most part, I mean, and they get an extra game check.
Exactly. You get an extra game check. Plus, if you reach your bonus in your 17th game, you're going to be thanking your lucky stars that the league had a 17th game that year if you had to reach it in the regular season, which mostly do. So.
Right. But those contracts are few and far between for the most part. You know, those incentive-laden ones. You know, there are some of them out there, but for the most part.
Usually, though, when you get your contracts restructured, that's what they get restructured to, though. That's
right.
Sometimes. So I feel like that's the players. It will help the players that are generous and restructure their contracts to be more incentive-laden, where that's how they make their money, and it doesn't go on the hard cap. It goes whatever the other cap.
Yeah.
So I think
I'm with you.
Helpful.
I'm with you. Yeah. The thing of it is.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. The thing.
A final point. Go ahead. Yeah.
Because all I was just going to say was the thing of it is this. The only thing it's going to benefit the players is it's an extra game check. It means more potential for injury. It means another week of being exposed. It means another week of being, especially in February now, they're not tacking it on to the beginning of the season. They're tacking it on to the end of the season. So not only are the cold cities going to be even colder, which I'm
surprised by that since they eliminated a preseason week. I would think they would just start
the season earlier.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting until Labor Day and then pushing it into February. What are you talking about? Who wants to be in Buffalo in February? You know what I mean? Yeah. Seriously, who wants to be in Denver in February? Are you going to even be able to fly there?
People are going to go if their teams are good.
Well, yeah, I know.
Buffalo's got a massive following. They push.
I know.
Denver, when they're doing well, is a good.
They don't care. Yeah, they don't care if there's 25 inches of snow out there. They're still out there rooting for their team. Yeah, they don't care.
Plow to the front of the
right. No, I'm with you, but that's what I don't understand. That's the other thing too that doesn't make any sense. Why tack it on to the end? Why not put it at the beginning when there's
I agree with
nice weather So you're not playing in, frigid temperatures in Buffalo and Denver and New England and Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Cincinnati. All those outdoor stadiums and stuff now are going to be even more colder now that you're playing games now in February.
And even Philly, if you look at this year, with the snow income this year, if it's the same as next year, you're going to have some issues when it comes into playing in February also. So
You
yeah,
know what?
I completely agree with you on that. But I think unless if you have a closing point
Yeah.
on the new takes or the new rules with the NFL extending it and canceling one preseason game, we could move into some of the signees of the
I
offseason
think we should.
thus far.
I think we should. Yeah, because there's been
Okay.
a lot of movers and shakers that have
Yeah.
definitely gone here, and they're going to see a lot of new, fresh faces in some new places this year. That's for sure, man.
And I think one that was recruited, obviously, by his former teammate, that is potentially one of the more underrated signings of this offseason because he kicked us off, really, with a big name guy and then got buried by the other signings since the beginning of March, was Watt getting recruited by Hopkins to go to the Cardinals. Because if he stays healthy, he's still a pretty darn good, productive player,
Yeah,
actually, J.J. Watt.
yeah,
So if he stays healthy with the Cardinals that already had a pretty solid developing a defense that seemed to be coming into its own a bit, and obviously adding J.J. Watt will only help. I think this team is getting better each year. That was a good, interesting pickup for the Arizona
for the
Cardinals.
Cardinals. Yeah, it does seem like they have definitely done the right things to improve their team. And I like how they've gone moving forward. Kyler Murray has been nothing short of amazing since he's been in the league, and now that he has, um, uh, not only does he have two great offensive receivers to throw to, but now he's starting to get some defense to play along there too. You know what I mean? And that only helps those types of quarterbacks. That only gives those guys that particular type of great ways of doing things when quarterbacks have defenses that they can rely on. You know what I mean? So it makes things a little easier that way.
Yeah, and we know this team was solid last year because they competed at an 8-8 record. So adding in a J.J. Watt, a couple other pieces, they've also brought in this offseason AJ Green. Um, the adding in some of these guys that can kind of just help your team as just towards like maybe the back end of their careers at this point, but still helpful players if they're on the
Oh
field.
yeah, yeah.
Green is a red zone threat primarily, and then Watt is still a pretty impactful defensive player. They seem to be adding guys rightfully where they need them, so it definitely seems like they're moving in the right direction to be better than 500 this year. So more power to them. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Once they got rid of the coach and the general manager of the Texans, and now things are starting to change here a little bit, I think, because of what was going on there. So I think that's why we're seeing some of those moves happen here. Why some players are leaving Houston. You know what I mean? J.J. Watt being another one that's leaving Houston. Some other players want out of Houston as well too. So. But good for the Cardinals. I think that's going to be a good move for them. One of the other things too was the Tennessee Titans signed Bud Dupree away from the Steelers for
Yep.
a rather large honking. By the way, honking is a technical term for a big giant satchel full of money. $85 million, 35 of it guaranteed to go play for them. So that's a pretty big significant move for Tennessee because they need an edge rusher. They need that player that can
Which
be
was one
that.
of the only things they kind of needed on defense because their defense was not too bad
Right.
otherwise to go together with their offense. So.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So those kinds of things. And then you can't ignore the Carson Wentz move out of Philadelphia. That I think
To
was
the
one.
Colts, yeah.
Yeah, and then the other major one was the Stafford and Goff switch, where
Yeah,
Goff
really
went to
early
the
in the
Rams,
offseason, yeah.
right? Goff went to the Rams, Stafford went to the Rams, and Goff went to the Lions. Yeah. I've always liked Stafford, and I always thought he was a really good quarterback. And gosh, if you put a team around him and a defense, oh my gosh. Oh.
Yeah, the Rams are a much better fit for him to, one, be able to stay healthy, and two, for if he stays healthy, to be able to succeed. For Jared Goff, it's going to be interesting to see what he's going to be able to do on a team that hasn't been building their team the best around the quarterback they previously had in Stafford. So we'll see if they're able to do it a little bit better around Goff. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I think him going there, I think we talked about this a little bit on our one show, but I feel like him going there with Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods.
Oh yeah.
You got
Jeez.
Higbee at tight end. You got good blockers there. I think him going there is definitely going to benefit his career as long as he doesn't have, which he's been having at times, those fluke injuries
Right.
too, which we hope don't happen for Stafford. But if he can stay on the field, I
Yeah.
think they'd be good. They brought in Bortles as a backup, who is a pretty solid backup, not as good of a starter. Only had one really spark year, but a good, decent backup to have on your team. So, yeah, the Rams, they went 10-6 last year. I think bringing in Stafford, they should at least do that again. So
Especially
I
with that
feel like,
defense. Especially with that defense, you got Aaron Donald winning Defensive Player of the Year, which I could argue that there should have been another player that should have been selected for that particular honor. But I mean, when you got that kind of player as the stalwart of your defense, the keystone of your defense, and you put a player like Stafford back there as your quarterback, and you give him a run game, and you give him some guys to throw to, and you give him some blocking, and you give him some protection. Hey, what? They could be going back. They got the makings now. They got they're stirring the pot here. They might be able to be that NFC representative. I think they're going to have a better record than what they did last year.
yeah, they were 10-6. 10-6 is a pretty good record. I could see them getting to like 11 or 12 if Stafford stays healthy.
Yeah,
Bortles is a guy, I think if he's playing like 4 or 5 games, like a handful, you'll be good. So you still
yeah,
need Stafford to stay predominantly healthy. But I think a guy when it comes to signing, we just talked about the Texans not being able to sign anybody. They did keep in a guy that's trying to resurrect his career in David Johnson. So maybe he's trying to show he's a team player combined with the fact he's trying to resurrect his career, which I don't think was ever a question for him the first part.
yeah, right.
By
Yeah.
staying with the Texans. But he knows if he stays there too, he's going to get a lot of reps, especially if Deshaun Watson is not their quarterback. They're going to be trying to hand it off to a running back a decent amount. If he can stay healthy, he can build back up his career. So I think that kind of makes sense. Where at first I kind of looked at that like, why the hell would he want to stay with the Texans? And then I went, oh wait, he has the best chance to, after thinking about it, to kind of build back up his career. So I think that's pretty good for them. And then the Bengals, in terms of keeping guys around that did good, they re-signed guys in Jalen Davis and Clark Harris for their defense, which when you're building a team with a young quarterback, you're trying to build up and make sense to kind of keep people in house that performed for you last season. So I feel like that just makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Texans signing Justin Britt to a 1 year deal worth up to $5 million. The center, the very good center, was more of maybe this can convince Deshaun Watson to
Maybe.
stay a little bit more because we signed a center, which is not going to work. But it also they didn't have the most consistent blocking, so
Right.
it makes sense to try to bring in other people, whether Deshaun's your quarterback or someone else is your quarterback, just to add to your offensive line. So they brought in him. So at least some people, I guess, still have interest playing for Houston.
One of the other things too that was a little bit interesting that I saw that happened just recently was the draft picks that were traded between the 49ers and the Dolphins, where the 49ers were able to acquire the third overall pick from the Dolphins in exchange for the 12th overall pick. So the Dolphins get the 12th overall pick from the 49ers, and then the 49ers get the third overall pick, and then they gave the Dolphins like first-round pick for next year, a third-round pick, second-round pick, a whole bunch of other picks for the next couple of years. So it seems like the 49ers are trying to position themselves for some type of top three. I mean, you're looking at either a quarterback or something in 49er land. You know what I mean? So the trade that happened with the Dolphins, that kind of
I don't think they did the 12th pick because the Eagles got the 12th pick in their deal.
Okay.
So I feel like that would involve the Dolphins trade number 3 to 49ers. Oh, no. That's what happened. The Dolphins traded the number 3 to the 49ers for the number 12 pick, and then I guess they traded us the number 12 pick they got from the 49ers.
Oh, so then they made another. Okay.
Because the Dolphins traded the number 3 pick to the 49ers for the number 12 pick.
All right. All I saw was the 40. Yeah, I didn't see that other part. All right.
2020 second, third, a 2023 first round pick.
Okay.
So the Dolphins wanted to acquire a lot more picks, and then the Eagles traded the number 6 and number 156 picks to the Dolphins for number 12, number 123. And a 2022 first round pick from the Dolphins. So, and then if Carson Wentz plays 75% of his snaps, the Eagles will now have 3 first round picks for next year's draft. So they're kind of trying to just stock up on draft capital, whereas that's also what the Dolphins did in that trade, because they still kept this year's pick, they moved up in the draft, and then just happened to
well, actually, they moved back.
They ended up moving up with our pick. I mean, to go back up.
That's right.
They went back up to 6 after trading with the Eagles.
Oh, my gosh.
And then they brought in a 2022 first in the 49ers one. So even though they traded us their 2022 first, they should still have another because they brought in one in the 49ers. Okay. So I think that was just a crazy day for the Dolphins, but they gave us some draft capital in the process for the future. So I thank them for that. I just feel like for the Eagles' perspective, that was to set up something for the future because they're not the best drafting team, obviously, because Howie just doesn't listen to his scouts and people around him that he should listen to. So I feel like that might be, there's been the Deshaun Watson trade rumors and all that. If he gets traded, Russ doesn't seem like he's going to get traded, but if you bring in all these draft picks, that's what's going to entice teams more to someone. So I feel like that could also
Makes sense.
I have confidence in Hurts, but if the Eagles still want to look elsewhere because there's been reports that the organization is still split, then that could be why they brought in draft capital to have more assets to trade. Or if you're going to go with Hurts, having a bunch of firsts is good to be able to trade for receivers or top-of-the-line linemen or whatever you need to add to your team.
Exactly. And the Eagles did bring in Joe Flacco for backup quarterback position.
Yeah, local area product too, yeah. Flacco for a backup position. That made some sense to me. And obviously the Bills kept Michael Hyde, which made sense because you obviously had to keep him. I think the Bucs keeping Fournette, who fit in down there.
Yeah.
It's a nice small keep.
Well, they also re-signed Brady and
of course they
Gronk.
Brady.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Gronk
keeping
was the more questioned one because would he actually continue to play or would he decide to
right? But keeping the running back down there too, I think, was also key for the Tampa Bay, as keeping Fournette down there as well too.
And then the Vikings also got Xavier Woods on a really cheap deal just due to his health concerns or whatever. So if he can stay on the field, that could be a steal at 2.25. I'm sure that one might have some of those incentive things we talked about maybe in it, but that seems like a pretty decent deal for them. And the Chiefs don't need to add to their defense, but they signed Jaron Reed to a 1-year deal for $7 million just for the heck of it, I guess, because
they need to get better,
and then decided, to sign him to that. Your steal was re-signed your punter, Jordan Berry, so you kept Jordan Berry in town at least.
Okay, let's talk about them a little bit because they did some interesting things this year. And we're not going to talk about Jordan Berry because he was waived from the team and then re-signed last year because the guy they brought in, Colquitt, which was the son of another famous Colquitt, couldn't punt out of a wet paper bag. And so they brought back Jordan Berry and re-signed him back. So now they're re-signing him. Like, really? Okay. So a lot of turnaround happened in Pittsburgh. Offensive coordinator was removed, and some other defensive positional coaches weren't retained, and things of that nature. That was mandated by ownership. Ben Roethlisberger restructured his contract to save $15.5 million in cap space. Subsequently, the Steelers then saw Marquise Pouncey retire, Vance McDonald retire. And so that really was, I mean, Marquise Pouncey, that's a blow. They did re-sign B.J. Finney. They re-signed Juju Smith-Schuster. Hey, all right, 1 year, $8 million for Juju.
That was a little bit under what you expected, though, because you were saying 10 or over when I talked to you about that
right
before.
Yeah, I was expecting that. But what ended up happening is that he signed for 8. He's getting the minimum of 1.16, and the rest was rolled into a bonus. So he's only counting as 1.16 million as against the cap for this new deal.
Okay.
Right. They rolled everything into a bonus.
That's one of those smart contracts we were talking about earlier.
Right. Exactly.
Bonus and save the cap. Yeah.
Exactly. So it allowed some of the they lost Bud Dupree obviously to the Titans. They lost Hilton to Cincinnati. So he signed a pretty big contract with them. Tyson Allahu was able to come back and re-sign, and they did re-sign Juju. Spillane re-signed. Killebrew signed from outside. Some of the other. So Pittsburgh was able to retain some, but not everybody. Obviously, Bud Dupree's gone and things like that. Because they're so up against the cap, that's why they weren't really. I mean, I think they're done. They did re-sign, B.J. Finney to replace Pouncey, and they are, quote unquote, telling Alejandro Villanueva to not sell his Pittsburgh house. He hasn't been re-signed, but I guess they're talking to him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the Eagles have more since they're kind of in a limbo period figuring stuff out. They kept Ridgeway to a low risk, kind of like low risk, high reward deal. They had guys restructure their contracts themselves, like Graham and others, which was nice. They brought in Flacco, like you said, who's a good veteran to have in the room. They waived Dante Burnett, who I didn't even realize was still on the roster as a depth wide receiver, to be quite honest with you.
Right. And you did lose Alshon Jeffries, too, didn't you? Or Deshaun Jackson or somebody you lost? Aguilar you lost.
Yeah,
right?
We got rid of Jackson and a lot of the guys that were aging, Jeffrey and Jackson, in the offseason. We haven't really done much to replace them. We brought in guys like Anthony Harris for our secondary. I'm hoping that they can do a little bit more than they've done in the previous encounters. So we'll see what they're able to do. Graham signed a 1-year extension with us. So it's going to be interesting to see what Anthony Harris is able to do. He's had some good years with the Vikings. So I think bringing him in was smart for the Eagles, who need help in their secondary big time, which was torture to watch at times last year, where it said with the Eagles, Jonathan Garron, and with an article I read that I just pulled back up by Glenn Irby in the Eagles Wire that was really good. They picked him up because he already has he's already been interlocked with Gannon before. They spent 3 seasons together in Minnesota from 15 to 17, and that was a huge key that was accredited to Harris's development. Where Harris, his final season with Gannon, allowing a passer rating of 24 after being targeted 13 times and surrendering 7 receptions for only 52 yards. Wow. So he played really good under Gannon. So Harris is the one significant signing. Then they brought in, I'm trying to remember the other secondary player's name that's more of a special teams like wizard than he is anything else from the article I read about him. I'm just trying to see. Let's see. Harris Hill. It wasn't Craig James. It was And then McLeod's also coming back from injury if he can stay in this year and kind of be healthy. So that's going to be absolutely big for the Eagles to actually have him be able to play and stay healthy.
Definitely. It's kind of funny though that
this is it. Andrew Adams, that's the dude that landed a deal with us. He's more of just a special teams guy that's 28 years old that went to Connecticut. So he's a guy that's really just there for special teams. So yeah, they brought in their only big signing was really Harris, and then they re-signed some people, and then Flacco's a good guy to have in a quarterback group. Super Bowl has been around the block for a young quarterback. So it shows this Eagles team is retooling at the very least. They don't really want to say they're rebuilding, quote unquote. But when you bring in pick assets in the trade I aforementioned, after the Dolphins already did a trade to secure themselves with picks already, this trade, we brought in stocked up picks. So you're either doing that to draft more young guys to be your next core around Hurts, or to pick up a quarterback or trade for a quarterback on the market now or as a market developed if things hit the wire in another organization over time and another quarterback has to move on. So I think it's interesting, but it clearly shows they're at least retooling.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100% on that. Well, there you go, man. I think what we'll do here is we'll take a little word from our sponsors, and we'll come right back after these messages here from our sponsor, cccresorts.com, a great place to take your pet for all your daycare, spa, and pool needs. They have an indoor and an outdoor pool that's salt filtered, so it doesn't hurt the skin of the dogs. Plus, you can go in there for daycare. They have great daycare programs and all kinds of great stuff. So check out this commercial. They'll give you all the great information. Thank you very much for being our sponsors, and we'll be right back after this. Greetings. This is SteelFlyers from the SteelFlyers All Sports Network, and we have two very special guests. We are delighted to be joined by Tracy Musser and Nicole Howard from the Canine Country Club Resorts. Tracy and Nicole are both managers for CCC Resorts and work at the Windsor or at the club, one of two locations both in Manheim, Pennsylvania. Congratulations on your 30th year anniversary of being in business. Let me start off by saying this. SteelFlyers stands behind this company 100%. They've taken care of SteelFlyers Furry Friend for the last 2 years now, and they are a one-stop shop for everything your furry friend needs. In fact, let's find out what our friends at CCC Resorts offer. Nicole, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you. What are some of the great boarding services that you guys offer, and what do we have to do in order to get our furry friends taken care of when we are unable to travel with them?
Well, we like to bring everybody in for a tour first. That way they can see the behind the scenes, they can see where they stay, they can see where they play, and then we explain all of the fun things that we can add on to their reservation, whether it be one of our packages, either a nature walk, a ball time, or even a cuddle time.
Oh, wow, that sounds great. Boy, it sure sounds like a resort to me. So how are you today, Tracy?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Tracy, tell me, is it true that you guys have both an indoor and an outdoor pool at the Windsor location?
It is true. We've got one of each, so we're able to offer year-round swimming. The indoor pool is a great option for dogs who are swimming for therapy or rehab. It's got that sloped entry so they can wade into the water. Our outdoor pool is a little bit larger, and it's 4 foot deep the whole way across. Both of them are saltwater pools, so it's really easy on the dog's skin and coat.
Wow, that's very awesome. So then during the summer months, you have a much deeper pool outside and then a sloped entry shallow pool indoors for the dogs. Tracy, tell the folks how we can get some pool time.
Well, the first thing everyone does is come for an intro swim. We use that time to make sure the dog is comfortable in the water. We make sure they know how to get out of the pool safely, and we go over all the pool rules and etiquette with the clients as well. After that, they're able to schedule private appointments where they have the pool to themselves, or they can invite friends and have a whole group swim going on.
So after a dip in the pool, then it would have to be off to the groomers, right? I mean, our furry friends cannot go out looking their best. Nicole, what are some of the great services your top-notch groomers provide?
Our groomers, they specialize in full service grooms. We can do the basics, whether it be just a bath and a brush out or a blowout. Or for the extra pampered pooches, we can do nail Dremels, we can do deodorizing soaks, and also facials.
Wow, man, that sounds like a resort if you ask me. Tracy, I know one of the main programs here at CCC Resorts is the WAGS program. The SteelFlyers dog is enrolled in this program. So why don't you tell the folks what is involved in this and how they can get enrolled?
Yeah, the WAGS program is our primary daycare option at the Windsor. It's designed to be a structured program for people who are looking for a set routine for their dog. They all come on the same days each week, which allows them to have set friends, and we know exactly what's going on with each group. So we do a little bit more activities, and we build more into their daily routine there. But we've got other daycare options as well for the people looking for a little less commitment. We do an hourly care where you can drop them off and just pay by the hour. We also do a day stay option, which is great for the dogs that prefer human friends instead of making friends with other dogs. And then we have a traditional daycare option as well if you're looking for the occasional outing for your dog.
Wow, there you have it. A full-service groomer, a daycare program, and an indoor and outdoor pool. What more could you ask for? Sure seems like CCC Resorts has everything covered. Remember, DOG, depend on God. All right. Thank you very much for checking out our great sponsor there, www.cccresorts.com. Thank you very much for their sponsorship. Appreciate all that. And we're back with the great Joe, and I think we're going to get into a little bit of NHL talk now, aren't we?
If we want to move into the NHL, yeah, we can go to that next. That's fine.
Okay.
And then we'll do NBA, and then we'll go to some basketball talk.
Can't forget about a little bit of some of the, the national pastime either, man. That's coming up soon too, right? Like we're starting in 2 days.
Yeah, that'll be what we'll close it out with baseball because I feel like that'll be our longest thing since that's coming into the season. But right now we have the NHL is kind of coming into its roundabout. Other than a select few games, most teams have 20, 21 games about remaining, except for the teams that have games at hand because of COVID and different things like the Bruins, the Stars, for example. But this is really when it's no more moral victories. Every team needs to actually get the wins now in order to be able to supplant themselves, move up in the standings, and get themselves in the playoffs. As of right now, Nashville has moved tied points wise, but has moved, I guess, for some tiebreaker, maybe head to head. I'm not sure what their head to head matchup record is, ahead of Chicago, so they're in fourth. Not going to either fourth place team is not likely to catch Florida, Carolina, or Tampa Bay. But it's a battle of who's going to come in fourth place between Dallas, Columbus, Chicago, and Nashville right now in that division. That's interesting to watch. And
Wow.
Chi-Town just got reinvigorated because Kirby Dach is now going to be back in their lineup and was back in their lineup. So it's going to be interesting to see the infusion he brings coming back into their lineup. So I feel like the Chicago Blackhawks still, to me, are my favorite for that, with the Predators now being right on their behinds because of how well they've been playing lately, and Soros is coming back into his own and is actually not struggling left and right like he did to start the season, where now he's actually starting to look like he did a little bit in past years. But I think the big thing we saw was Dach, when he came back, played over 20 minutes already. So his ethic is key. He's really been working at it. He's really been working out. I think he's going to be pivotal for the Blackhawks. They're still my favorite to come in fourth. But what are your thoughts on, because no one's going to really catch the third through first place teams in this one, unless if they really go on a run in the last month. What are your thoughts for the battle of fourth place in the Central Division?
Okay, well, I think what's going to happen here, because the injury to Ekblad from Florida is going to be a major blow. Okay. And if Nashville continues to play, and if Chicago plays better and well, look, we weren't expecting Florida to even be remotely close to where they are right now. And we were kind of not really expecting Nashville to be there either. We were kind of thinking more maybe it was going to be a fight between Chicago, Columbus, and Dallas instead of Nashville. So the fact that Nashville is even there, if anything happens to Nashville during the trade deadline and they suddenly lose players, then yeah, I'm with you. I'm still with Chicago with you on that one. Okay, as far as what I think's going on here. But I think the injury though for Florida, now I think this is gonna, I mean, they're 11 points ahead. So something major would have to happen. You know what I mean?
That's what I mean. I feel like they'll be able to stay steady enough because Dreger's been good, Bob's been good enough,
Right.
and Gudis has been good when in. You got Anton Strawman as a veteran. Now you're just really going to need the kid Riley Stillman to step up for you. And if he's able to do that, that would be helpful. Or maybe now, knowing he has another opportunity to prove himself,
Yes.
Marcus Nudavara can get his head out of his butt and actually do something for their team and not suck. So that would also be beneficial.
Those are technical terms, by the way. But I agree with But I agree with you 100%. Though I definitely agree with you 100%. And I think there's been some, and I think we're going to start seeing some interesting moves now with the NHL, especially now since the league or Canada has relaxed the
7 days, yeah, only to 7 days. I saw that Elliot Friedman when I was watching one of the games on NHL TV. They brought that up on the set for Sportsnet that it got waxed, which is great to see. And I think Florida is going to be at front of the line looking for some of these defensemen really competing with teams like us, the Philadelphia Flyers, and other franchises looking for defensemen now with this Ekblad injury for the rest of the season, because they might be front of the line to say, let's get Jomerson because he's a defensive defenseman. He can really help our defense. Then we'll just let him walk because he only has this year anyway. We don't really need him past this year with the salaries we're paying in the next coming years and having to re-sign some guys if you want to keep the Duclairs of the world and so on and so forth. But bringing them in for this year would be helpful for them. So they're definitely a team that I think is top of the line to bring in those guys. But I feel like we'll get guys that could step up. Kevin Connaughton has some NHL experience too. So I think until they trade for defenseman, which I foresee now with the Ekblad injury, they'll be able to hold their own unless if Chicago or Nashville really get going, or Dallas or Columbus. I don't see them making up that 10 or 11-point deficit, rather, to 11 to 15-point deficit, depending what team you look at.
Yeah, right. I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But it's just going to be interesting, I think, with how that whole thing is going to go. Because of that injury, I think it's definitely made things a little interesting now, especially now with that, and now with the trade deadline looming, and Florida now finding themselves with potential some cap space that they could do some stuff, to try to bring somebody in or whatever the case is, and that kind of thing. So I think I'm with you, but I think I'm going with Chicago to try to be more of the catch than Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's going to be Chicago because they've kind of stayed in it. They went struggling a bit, which Subban looked really good. Then started struggling a bit his last outing. He's looked good again. So if he can revert back after having a couple off starts to being the backup, he looked like he was going to become this year. You added in the infusion of Kirby Doc, who's already playing over 20 minutes a night. Suitors look good all season along with Kubalik. That Hagel kid is an energy guy. Has looked really good. So it just proves how good Colleton moves people into the lineup. They're a team that probably could add another defenseman too if they really want to guarantee making it. Riot Koldick played his first game the other day too, former Flyers property, but that they didn't decide to sign. And he ended up playing his first game and played over 10 minutes. So I think they have a team, if they wanted, they might be a team looking to add one other defenseman as well to kind of shred that up. So their forward group, I could definitely see them adding a veteran because they're really young if they kind of want to get, other than like the Ryan Carpenter and Carl Soderbergs of the world. Yeah. And obviously Kane. They're really young because Janmark's 28, but I wouldn't call him an NHL veteran because he kind of came up in his mid-20s. They are pretty young at the forward core. But with how well they've been performing, I would prioritize saying get that one defenseman because Calvin DeHaan's been solid this year, but he hasn't been as good as they hoped, I don't think. So I don't know if you have to continuously play him since he's going to be a UFA after next year. If you bring in someone for 1 year, you can kind of go to that. And they already know Jomerson. So if they're trying to compete, it would be interesting to see if Chicago thinks they can make it. If for one season they would try to reunite with someone they already know. and bring him back too. So we'll see if they're kind of in on his sweepstakes or just getting Jason Demers, Goligoski. Maybe they'll get Ekholm because if you look at the guys they have to protect, that wouldn't screw them that much in expansion because
Right.
Zadorov's going to be an RFA. I don't know if they care if they lose Zadorov, if they have an Ekholm. He's been performing well for them, but if you have Ekholm,
Right.
you're not reminded.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah.
So we'll see what the Chicago Blackhawks kind of play at since they're moving light years ahead of where I think they thought the rebuild would be. So
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that for sure. And it's what's really funny is that everybody's like, "Oh yeah, Chicago's in a rebuild." Well, if this is a rebuild, then I really want to see what else is going on there. That's for sure. I really we never really thought Florida was going to be there. Like I said, there's a lot of moves that could be made, and especially now with some of the injuries that have taken place, I think you're going to see some interesting moves happen here, especially at the trade deadline between the teams like maybe Florida, Nashville, and Chicago, so as they can try to fight their way to get in it. To be honest with you, I think Columbus is on the decline.
I haven't been impressed with them this year.
No.
I haven't. I also think it's because they're trying to overplay Corpy to trade him. Pirlo and I were talking about that a bit. It looks like they might be doing that to move him because Merzlikins, Corpy's playing solid, but Merzlikins, it seems like they play the best in front of him. So it just seems odd you're overplaying Corpy unless if it's for a trade. But yeah, right. I feel like it's going to be Dallas has a couple games at hand still. They're 4 behind CBJ and Chicago and Nashville. So they could catch them. I feel like Columbus is the odd team out of the teams we mentioned.
Exactly. You know what? And if Dallas wins those games that they have in hand, because some of them are against Nashville and Chicago, and if they win those games, then that is going to particularly put them in a much better position. You know what I mean? And I think Dallas is their injuries are starting to, some of the injured players are starting to come back. You know, some of that kind of stuff is going on. We don't know really what's going on with Bowden, especially after the coaching issue and all the other stuff. So we'll see how that goes down there in Dallas.
Well, I think though, when it comes to the Central Division, if we want to move into, we could definitely give our first of the show, which is a little short segment thing we wanted to do to sometimes bring up. We could definitely give our first late round / undrafted shout out, which would go for someone that's not only potentially competing for the Rookie of the Year with the guys of Kirill Kaprizov, Tim Stützle, among others, but maybe the Vezina if he keeps up his statistical stats. Kevin Lankinen with a 2.72 and a 9.20 through 24 game, put in Chicago on his back to get them to where they're at now, to be able to, along with their offense, because their defense is still coming into its own with a lot of their guys. Really carrying the weight of this team. So he's definitely a good guy to get the first late round / undrafted, he being undrafted, shout out bid.
For sure. One of the things that has really been amazing is this. The fact that Chicago is even knocking on the door. You know, with the goaltending, we thought their goaltending was going to be suspect. Their goaltending has turned out to be okay. You know what I mean?
Really good from one, and then okay, actually backup adequate from Subban this year. Yeah.
So, like I said, it's been amazing seeing how this team Chicago has progressed and everything like that. So, but here's the thing though, you got Tampa Bay in this division, and you want to start talking about Vezinas, I'm gonna have to start saying Vasilevsky.
Well, Vazzy's probably the favorite, but I'm saying Lankinen with his statistics, you probably have to, if he keeps those statistics up, you have to put him somewhere in the top 5, I would say, of voting.
Agreed.
So doing that in your rookie season is still impressive because I don't think Fleury's, to put it in perspective, has finished in the top. It's either he hasn't finished in the top 3 or the top 5.
Right.
His entire career, this year, he obviously has a chance, if he keeps up his statistics, which we'll get to him in a minute, to potentially win the whole darn thing. I would say he's the guy that would challenge the whole, well, wait a minute, I'm not sure if Vasilevsky's actually the favorite right now thing. He would be the biggest challenger. But he's a guy that definitely has a chance to finish in that top 5 now.
Yeah. Agreed. They're going to be in the running, but man, putting 12 games together, 12, 12 no 12 wins in a row.
Oh, that's big. It's just I think voters also look at the Lightning. It hurts you as a goaltender. That's why it's tough to be a goaltender when your team is one of the better ever assembled teams of the decade.
Yeah, you think?
Including like not just the start of this decade, but including 2010 through 2020
No,
and
I agree.
into now. So that's why I think Vasilevsky deserves to potentially get it. But I feel like you also we've seen Giordano, who deserved it, got it when they knew it would be the last chance he has to get it. Fleury, surprisingly, has never come high in the voting and never won a Vezina, even though he's won 3 cups and has been a big part of some of those cup-winning teams. Sometimes the awards tend to go to guys they think need to get them before they're basically gone at that point, where Andre Vasilevsky, I don't think you're going to have to worry about him not being able to compete for a Vezina for probably another 10
well, that's
years
a pretty
or so. At this point, he's
horrible
only
way
6
to
years
do
old.
it.
He already won one. If
Okay.
somebody, if and also Vegas, I would say Tampa has a really good defense along with Vegas, but Vegas has a lot more of the younger bucks in there. So I would still say you could factor that, and I think it's going to be close. I would say my top 2 are probably
Those
him
two.
and no, actually, no. My top 2 right now are probably Vazzy, Grubauer, and then Fleury, because Grubauer is doing really good in Colorado.
Because that's who I was going to mention was Grubauer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So at least we're all on the same page there. We think the Grubauers should be in that mix. He has to be.
That's what E Money and I mentioned when we talked about it on the midseason rewards show. Check that out on my Sports News page. That we thought Grubauer has to be mentioned because if you look at his let me pull him up. I'm on. Let me go on Hockey Reference because if you look at his stats, it just proves his career numbers.
His goals against for this year. His goals against for this year.
This year. I'm just talking about like how his career numbers prove he's been good when healthy, like a 2.33, 9.21. He's a guy that's done really good. Played over 203 games and is 100 wins to 59 losses. So when healthy, he's produced. He's definitely a guy that I would not mind having on my team. We don't need a goalie, but if you needed a goalie, he was a great get for Colorado, who just keeps impressing with guys they bring in. And Grubauer definitely deserves to be the 174 and a 929. I would say he's in second place or first for some people because of how I think for a lot of people they would vote for him over Vazzy just because nobody expected Philly Grubauer either to be matching almost Vasilevsky's numbers. So you also have the factor of, oh my God, this guy's finally really zone.
Yeah.
It took a little bit, but now we think he's hitting his stride. Bless his soul that he's staying healthy. That's what's really only held him back. I need to vote for this guy having this big season, where Vasilevsky probably has the potential to win 5 Vezinas in the next 7 years. So it's not like you have the incentive to need to vote for Vazzy if someone's even with him statistically.
But I'm not of that. I'm not a fan of that way of thinking. I'm sorry, but just because you think this is the last guy's chance to get it, that you're going to give him the trophy, no.
Well, no, I don't think it is for Gruby. I'm saying Gruby's pretty much even with Vazzy if you look at their stats.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that I think their line of thinking of how they award the trophy, I think it should be based off of the guy's statistics for this year, not what he did last year or the year before, how many cups he's had or anything like that. I think it should be based off of what they did this year. And unfortunately, it sounds like that's not the case.
I mean, I think that's the case a lot of the time, but sometimes when guys already won an award and a guy's even with them statistically, you're more prone to give it to a guy that hasn't won it because he's literally pretty much even but statistically. Like if Gruby and him stay the same, if it's like Fleury's numbers are spread now, but I feel like Vazzy's not going to finish with a 1-7 or a 1. Like, that would be ridiculous if you stay at that through the last month. I feel like that'll go up closer to a 2 like Fleury has, even though Vegas is a very good team.
Okay,
Awesome.
I got you.
So
I got you.
if that happens, I think those 3 might balance out, and you're kind of see those 3 in the top 3, where it'll probably be now between Groovy and Vazzy really battling. But before we move into some other talk on other teams that are surprising in the Central, another late rounds 2 undrafted shout out we can give that they brought over from the good country of Switzerland is to the Chicago Blackhawks again, is Pius Suter. Pius Suter came over and has immediately, before Doc came back, was on the first line, has 18 points in 36 games, looked good offensively, defensively, PK, power play. So shout out to him for being able to get done more than I think they expected in his first in the NHL. Yeah.
Well, you know what's going on up there is the ownership and the leadership up there in Chicago. I mean, the
Bowmans definitely know how to bring in people. That is for sure. I think a surprise team we have to get to when it comes to the Central division, 100%. Is we have to talk a little bit more on what got the Florida Panthers to this spot, which is obviously the big guy that's going down, which is Aaron Ekblad, which is why we discussed earlier. We believe they'll probably trade for one of the defensemen on the market due to Ekblad going down. But a big interesting factor of what has got them here is the play of one of their goalies, but I don't think it's the goalie we necessarily expected to carry the torch. Bob still played 5 more games, but that's still a lot closer than I think Florida expected to a $10 million goaltender, to a guy that gets paid $850K, and Drigger, who's a good developing goalie they liked, who, again, we might as well give it. This is more of a not necessarily late round shout out, but a third round getting towards after the second round. Shout out to Chris Dreiger for actually becoming the goalie that Ottawa once thought he could be before they moved on from him, which is probably something that would be nice for them to have him and Gus there now. But he's performing really well in Florida, 220 and 927 and 9-4 record. Bob is a 13-5 record, but just hasn't looked as smooth in net.
Yeah.
It's really impressive what that kid's been able to do, and what this Panthers team as a whole has been able to do. I think if you look at Coach of the Year, Quenneville's definitely one of the favorites probably right now when it comes to Coach of the Year.
Yeah, you'd have to say, I would have to say that because of exactly with what we were talking about at the beginning of the year. We didn't think that Florida was going to be this close. We didn't think they were going to be this good because we thought their defense was suspect. We thought that Bob was going to be a hindrance. You know what I mean? And there was questioning.
And he's not bad. He's just not as good.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Like this year, I would say he's good. It's just he's not what you paid for. Like, he's not Bob. He's just being a good goaltender, and you don't pay a good goaltender $10 million.
No,
you pay an elite goaltender $10 million.
Exactly. And Bob is not playing at that level. So that is a bit of a disappointment. So, but to still have him playing and winning games, okay, I guess you're going to have to take that. But the fact that their backup goalie has been playing much better, the fact that the other players on the team have been playing much better. Ekblad, Huberdeau, you know what I mean? And
Petronic, that's another kid we can give an undrafted shout out to. He coming from a trade has fit in really well, 14 points in 35 games since coming over there. This is his year. He's really exploded.
Yeah.
So you just see him at 27 really start to break out for the Panthers too. And he's a guy, an energizer guy that can do offense and defensive stuff for you also.
You know, it's going to be this is what I want to kind of pay attention to, especially this week with the entry to Eklund. I want to see what Florida does, because when Anders Lee went down with the New York Islanders. He was their captain, but it only took him like 3 games to kind of go, okay, gosh, we're missing our captain. And then within the third game, they were kind of back to where they were. So I would like to see if there's a drop off or if anything happens in Florida over the next couple of games, especially missing this player. I'd be interested to see how that goes because they're so tight right now. Yeah, they're so tight right now. At the top right now, 48, 49, and 50 are the top three. Tampa Bay has 50, Carolina has 49, Florida has 48. Okay, so if they drop a couple of games or if anything happens and suddenly Nashville starts winning, there you go. There's the makeup. Okay, 10 points doesn't take much in this NFL in this NHL season this year.
Yeah, I mean, Florida also has one game at hand on Nashville. I think, unless if it all goes down for them, I feel like they're really at the clash for Nashville and or Chicago as the two primaries, with Dallas being the next team to potentially catch them on the bubble.
Yeah.
Just because Florida has had Uyghur step up this year. Gudas has looked really good for them. Yondel's looked good offensively. Obviously, you know what he is defensively. Strawman's a good veteran to have, especially now in this instance. You have guys that can step in.
Niederreiter's been playing really well too. Yeah.
Uyghur, who has really stepped up already to even do more. They're going to be asking Gudas to play more minutes, so we'll see if he's able to take that. He's already averaging 17, which is a decent bit for him. And then Strawman to kind of have even more of an impact. And then Riley Stillman, the youngster, if Uyghur doesn't emerge, or not Uyghur, if Nudavara doesn't emerge and actually perform and do anything for them, they're going to need Riley Stillman, the youngster, to step up for them. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, but I feel like it's most likely acquiring somebody. But I think in terms of competing with Carolina and Tampa, even if they acquire somebody, that really, using an Ekblad really hurts their chances of that. I just think it's going to be hard for them to struggle enough to go all the way down to where Nashville and Chicago is, in my opinion, because of how well they've been rolling. And guys like Drigger have stepped up for them in games to win them some games. Bob has in a select few. So if you can kind of have those guys continue to do what they're doing and step up for you, and Bob starting to kind of look a little bit better this last month, if he can continue that into April compared to the start of the month at the beginning of March, he's starting to look better since the second half of the second week of March to now. He's starting to show signs. They'll be fine, but they definitely need to add a defensive defenseman, whoever that may be, whether it's a big name like Jomerson or just a smaller name like a David Savard to add to as a defenseman. They need somebody that can kind of just hone in on defense for them to help out in that spot just for 1 year, so then they don't lock themselves up for when Ekblad comes back next year. But,
right, I'm with you. All right, man.
I think we definitely discussed enough about the Central Division, that's for sure. I think a fun team that we definitely have to discuss that's been one of the most surprising in all of hockey as well is in the Honda West Division, which is the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah.
I feel like they're a team that their coach himself, Dean Evison, would also have to be one of the favorites for the Coach of the Year right now, getting the most out of this group. Obviously, a guy that was picked in the 5th round, 135, definitely gets a late round shout out. He's our first late round shout out. Everybody else we gave has been undrafted this far. Kirill the Thrill, who's the favorite most likely right now for the Rookie of the Year at 27 points in 33 games, 11 goals, 16 assists, and a +7. They've been just doing good mixing their lines. He's also moved Hartman to center when he's more of a winger and actually got good attributes out of him. And he's actually looking pretty darn good in the games I've watched and the condensed games I've watched and the games I haven't watched when he's been put at center. And is looking good overall as their energizer player with 12 points in 28 games, chips in a bit, pays on your PK. Johansson come back and has looked solid in 15 games. So if he could keep integrating well since coming back from injury, that would be big for them. So it seems like things are fitting into place. What are your thoughts on this Wild team, and if they're going to be able to continue to stay? They're at 44 now where Arizona's at 37 points right on the outside looking in. St. Louis is at 38. What are your thoughts on this team and if they're going to be able to kind of keep pushing it here, or if these other teams can catch up, or if they also, like we said with Chicago and teams like Nashville and Florida, could bring in some assets to help them push forward going into this season and the crunch time?
I really like Minnesota. I really like what they're doing. I really liked how Zuccarello has stepped up, Pacioretty has stepped up. I mean, this team has just been amazing. They are must-watch TV when they play against Colorado, when they play against
Pacioretty, because Pacioretty.
Yes, I'm sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, okay.
My mistake. But seeing them do that, seeing Minnesota do that, seeing them play this well, where we weren't looking at Minnesota at all, thinking, Minnesota, whatever. But here's the thing: they have 2 games in hand over St. Louis, right? And they also have 2 games in hand over Arizona. Arizona has 37 points. Minnesota has 44 points. So if Minnesota continues to keep playing, and they're only 4 points back from Colorado and 5 points back from Vegas, okay? So they're starting to separate themselves.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I think a lot would have to happen similar to what I was saying with Florida. I agree with you on that they're kind of separating themselves for them to fall. I do think one thing they have to do that I know my friend Frederick, that's a Minnesota fan, agrees with, is swap Rask and Eriksson Ek. Eriksson Ek's been playing a lot with Greenway and Bonino on the third line, which has looked fine, when Rask, now who looked good earlier on in the top line, kind of being just the middle guy to win face-offs and be that small player that chips in around Zuccarello and Kaprizov, now isn't working as well. So I feel like Eriksson Ek's performing like a top-line guy. He and Rossi, as time goes forward, are the guys you expect to be your top guys. Let Rask, who's really a third-line center in the first place, play third-line center and let him move up. That's the one thing I would change there. In terms of acquiring people, Suter, Spurgeon, Brodin, Dumba, and Cole have all looked pretty good on defense this year. Talbot and Kokkonen are probably in line for competing for the William Jennings for one of the best goaltender combos in the league. And then they have Brad Hunt, who's performed poorly for them, but if he comes in and can kind of do some stuff, has been decent when he was with Vegas.
Well, who would have thought?
As a defenseman, as a veteran. So I feel like they're a team, unless if you're adding maybe like a veteran bottom tier forward, since you could maybe get a center that would then maybe be a fourth line center. So Luke Johnson, who's only played 7 games. Foligno's injured now, who's supposed to be week to week. So I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in like just one of those face-off winning Nate Thompsons of the world, not necessarily him, but someone that just wins face-offs as a bottom line guy.
Yeah.
So they don't always have to play Luke Johnson, maybe, unless if they really think he can kind of fit in around Bukestad and Stern. But this team's rolling in the right direction. I definitely think they're going to make the playoffs. And with how Kaprizov's playing, some of their other guys, Spurgeon's having one of his best seasons, and their goaltendings look really good. They're definitely a team I would not want to play. The only thing I question with them is playoff experience. Is that going to bite them in the butt eventually, especially in their forward core, as they go deep in the playoffs? They do get.
And here's a little update for you now, okay? After tomorrow's game against the Sharks. Okay, Minnesota plays the Golden Knights on the 1st. They play Colorado. They play the Golden Knights then again on the 3rd. Then they play Colorado on the 5th. And then they play Colorado again on the 7th. So their next 5 games, not including the one that's against San Jose. Right. So, their next 5 games, one of them's against San Jose, and then the next 2 is against Vegas. The next 2 is against Colorado. So these next 5 games for Minnesota are going to be very telling. And if they are able to do what we think they can do, they're going to need to win a good majority of these next 5 games.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to have to win at least probably against those teams, 2 of them, and then you're going to want to beat San Jose.
Right. So that means 3 out of the 5. So that's the majority of games.
You're going to want to win. If you end up losing to, I mean, you could get away with, because your biggest thing, I think they're more likely to stay with third place than catch Colorado or Vegas, just because Colorado and Vegas are 2 of the most ridiculous teams with goal differential.
Yeah, I'm with
They're
you.
ridiculous at plus 15, but Colorado's a plus 41, and Vegas is a plus 33. So I feel like both ways for those teams are just ridiculous, that they play 2 of the best both-way games, where Minnesota's getting there but is not there yet. So I feel like they're going to stay at third, where Colorado now, with everybody coming back and them getting their swagger back now with everybody in, is really starting to look like Colorado. So I think that's going to keep pushing them. I wouldn't be surprised if they had another goaltender, potentially too, not knowing when Francois is going to be fully ready. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do that. But I feel like them and Vegas is going to battle it out for the top, and Minnesota is going to be able to kind of supplant themselves as the 3, just because these 2 teams at the top in Vegas and Colorado, I feel, have been 2 of the best in the league, minus maybe Tampa Bay, all season, because of how they just play great on both ends and affect that differential in such a big factor, where Tampa's the only team that can say that in another division other than those 2. So.
The only other thing, too, is the next 3 games after they do that are against St. Louis, Minnesota. So they play a game against San Jose, then they play back-to-back against Vegas, then a back-to-back against Colorado, then they play 3 games against St. Louis.
Those are the biggest games, I think, because they want to stay in third for the best matchup in the first round, which I think is where likely where they're to be. So even if they only 2 out of 5, they really got to take 2 out of 3 against St. Louis.
Exactly.
Because those are the games they want to stay ahead of them.
Exactly.
Now, if they do that, they might help Arizona, or say if LA or somebody wins 3 out of 5 in the next week, they'd probably more likely Arizona, but one of those teams to move back up. But they don't care about that. They're just trying to supplant themselves in third place. I think it's likely this division is going to finish Colorado or Vegas, and then Minnesota, and then it's just going to be exactly like the Central, is a battle of the wits to the end, probably more between 2 teams, but LA might be able to still push, especially if they acquire a defenseman.
And they have 2 games in hand.
And they have 2 games at hand to maybe make it 3 teams that push for the 4th spot in this division. But I think other than just, we already shouted out Grubauer earlier, which is something I wanted to do with the West, so we got to that, and we shouted out Fleury, how we think Fleury would be 3rd probably now. Gruby would be tied with Vazzy or 2nd in the Vezina, and that's probably out. And then Lankinen would probably be riding somewhere.
Yeah, but he might actually pick up the Calder, because I don't really see any. I mean, we don't really see any. Lafreniere is not lighting it up.
Well, Kaprizov could.
But so now then you would have to compare Kaprizov to later from Chicago.
To Lankinen,
Lankinen, yeah. So you can't really compare a goalie to a forward, but
that's why I feel like goalies usually don't win rookie, get gypped out of Rookie of the Year a lot, because it's hard to compare a position player,
right?
To a goaltender. That's why I feel usually they get gypped. But with how good Lankinen's doing, I could see him getting it. If you look at odds, though, Kaprizov's leading the odds in most odd.
Okay. All right. Well,
And then Stützle ahead of Stützle's even. I think Lankinen should be a guy that's heavily considered, along with, if I was voting, I would be between him and Kirill right now.
Yeah.
I think a lot more people, though, would be between him and Stützle, just because a lot of people look to position players first.
Yeah.
That's just the way that I think a lot of people look to it, where that's
But
how
see, like me and you, we think of as the goalie as one of the most important positions on the ice, and you would think that if you had a rookie goaltender,
we have to throw into the fact there's another guy on Minnesota that could easily be considered the rookie of the year, since I don't think he met the qualifier for games to not be in the rookie of the year match, which is well, no, he definitely didn't, because all he did was play 5 games last year, which is Kakkonen. Because Kakkonen is a 2.29 and a 9.21, so he's right there with Lankinen in terms of goaltenders. So you kind of have 2 goaltenders that are right there, and then you have 2 forwards that I think people are probably going to be looking at primarily when it comes to the rookie of the year. But I think we got into it enough with the Honda West division there. And the only other guy that I would say that deserves to get some praise is now you see Pettersson emerging in LA. So good for him to be able to kind of become the guy that I was thinking he would become coming into the season. I wrote an article about it, how I thought he would be the guy to kind of take the steep. Right. And that's what he did. He has a 2.58 and a 9.23. Or no, a 2.54 and a 9.23, excuse me. The 2.58 was his career goals against, and is looking really solid this year, really good positionally, and he's been crediting Quick a lot to his help, so their goaltender room seems to be flourishing there. Their goaltending staff, they're one of those teams like everybody has now, the whole goaltender staff room basically seems to be working well out there. So that's the last thing I think we would have on the West. The North, I think, is probably one of the most interesting. 3 is the magic number, so I figured I'll save that for the third division to talk about. You have Toronto was way ahead only about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. Now you have Winnipeg at 46 points and a plus 20 goal differential, and you have Edmonton at 45 and a plus 19 goal differential. And then you have Vancouver at 35 points, Calgary at 35 points, and Montreal at 37 points, all battling for the 4th seed. Montreal holds a tiebreaker in that because their goal differential is a plus 13 to a minus 16, a minus 20 of Vancouver, a minus 20, and a minus 16 to Calgary. But this division's so tight-knit in the top 3. Similarly to the West, but I feel like with this top 3, where Minnesota is kind of separated because of how ridiculous the goal differentials in 2-way games are of Vegas to Colorado compared to them getting there. This one seems a bit closer because Toronto's more run and gun with their defense has been improving. Muzzin's really helped them, but their defense looks best this year, where Winnipeg's obviously a run and gun team, that their defense looks better this year, but it's still kind of Hellbuck's really helping you out. Brosseau looks good as a backup, and your offense is the carrying weight of your team, not your defense. But they're looking good this year now. Their defense in recent weeks has looked better. That's what's brought them up to a plus 20 differential. And then you have Edmonton at a plus 19, riding on the coattails of Mike Smith. We wonder how long that'll be able to continue. I feel like with this division, I think if they keep going the way they are, I might honestly favor now Winnipeg to be able to take it, just because Freddie Anderson is kind of
or Edmonton.
He's obviously what?
Or Edmonton.
Potentially Edmonton. Yeah, Edmonton. I was going to get to in a minute, but in Winnipeg, I just expect them to have a chance, because if you look at Toronto, with Freddie Anderson not playing the way he was, and now obviously isn't even an option for you being out, I would say you need really Jack Campbell, obviously, to step up big time, who's been good for you. I really like what he's been able to do. I think Toronto has a chance to be able to win this division, but I think it's going to be really close between them and Winnipeg, just because you got Hall on defense, who's really coming into his own in Toronto. You got Brody, who was a very good pickup to help man their defense with Muzzin, Riley, Dermott, Bogosian. When Anderson comes back, if he can kind of mend the fences, you got him with Campbell, if Campbell can stay healthy. the big question is Campbell's got to stay healthy, otherwise they're completely screwed, and then Anderson has to come back and do it. I think Toronto still has a chance. The reason I put the Jets kind of right there with them and not Edmonton is the Jets have two goalies they know for a fact this year they can go to, where Koskinen got taxed at the beginning of the season because of the schedule, but then still hasn't really ever came back from it, given time to really be a steady backup, where they're really riding on the coattails of Mike Smith, where you have Brousseau, who's been performing as a good backup in 9 games, and then one of the best goalies in the league in Hellbuck. Stanley's emerged as a great defensive defenseman that at 6'6", basically a Morin-type guy. You got DeMello was a good pickup. Pionk's great. Forbert was a pickup. So both of these teams have pickups that added to their defense, which is really what they needed to add to. I just think the goaltending of Winnipeg to me right now, because Freddie Anderson, according to Cap Friendly, still unknown for duration, is really going to be what makes me think they have a chance to surpass Toronto now, because you're really going to have to ride on the coattails. I believe in Campbell, but, I mean, when it comes to other guys, who are the Leafs really going to go to when Jack Campbell's not in? Are you going to continuously go to, if I remember correctly, I believe they have Hutchinson there, Michael Hutchinson, who's been a journeyman, who really is a guy that only plays like 15 games a season because he's just a great guy in the room, but not the most consistent guy. It's going to be hard for them. So I would say it's a two-way race between them for the top, just because Edmonton really relies on their offense more than the other two. They're at a plus 19, but they're at a plus 19, I think, more than these other two teams, specifically because of two people. And that is Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. The reason they're at a plus 19, because they're the two guys that would probably be the top two in Hart race voting right now. So no kidding, you're at a plus 19 when one guy has 54 points and the other has the lead of 63 points in Connor McDavid, and then Nuge is 26, and Nurse and Barry offensively. Nurse has really stepped up defense on both sides, but Barry offensively 32 to 27 points. They have it because of their offense. That's why I have them ranked third.
Okay. All right, I got you.
I think their defense is a lot better, where this defense has Chris Russell as a mainstay, who's a good journeyman, good story, but not as consistent as the Derek Forberts and some of the other guys. William Legeson, as a youngster, stepped up, but when you get into the playoffs, I would rather have some veterans like Toronto and Winnipeg had, and also to get there. So I feel like they're in a little bit of a better spot.
Okay, here's some food for thought for you. Montreal's in 4th place with 37 points. They're 10 points back behind Toronto. They have 4 games in hand against Toronto. They have 5 games in hand against Winnipeg and Edmonton. They have 6 games in hand for Calgary and Vancouver, and 5 games in hand for Ottawa. Now, because Montreal's missed some games here because of COVID and things of that nature, they have 37 points with 14 wins, 8 losses, and 9 overtime ties. Okay. You have Edmonton at 45 points, just 2 points back behind Toronto. But yes, they do have a goal differential of plus 19, but their goals against is 103. The goals against for Winnipeg is 99. The goals against for Toronto is 91.
Yeah.
Okay. The goals for, that's where the major difference is, where Edmonton is at 122 and Winnipeg is at 119 and Toronto's at 116. Montreal's not even in the same hemisphere.
But that's not even a big difference between the three.
Right.
The defense of the other two teams compared to Edmonton. Nurse is just coming into his defensive earnest while doing good offensively. Barry only has a good plus minus because of his offense, where he still hasn't looked great defensively.
No, I agree.
I feel like the defense of the other two will make that, and also the goaltending of the other two would put them a little bit where if Anderson can come back by year's end, I feel like Toronto might be a team that's likely to pick up one of the marketed goaltenders now,
they
too.
Better hope they do.
Uncertainty. So I feel like that would be something they would do. that would kind of shore it up a bit.
Here's the thing, though. Toronto is 4-5-1 in their last 10. Winnipeg is 6-4-0. Edmonton is 7-2-1. Okay.
Yeah, Edmonton's been doing good. I'm just wondering how long are you going to be able to ride the coattails of a 39-year-old goaltender that's not getting any younger, just continuing to throw him out there. And then you have to really, when Koskinen's in, he hasn't found his mojo back from being overtaxed at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
You have to try to outscore your opponent. So I think you have to figure something.
I'm with you. But see, I don't think that – I think Winnipeg and Edmonton have a better chance of winning this division than Toronto. Because Toronto –
I just think Toronto is a deeper team. Because if you look at Edmonton – 95% of their scoring is Connor McDavid or Leon.
Okay. What's really going to show here is when we get to the playoffs, what's really going to show here. You know what I mean? I'm holding out hope for Montreal. I think they potentially could do it. They have quite a few games in hand. Once they get back and playing again and everything like that, I think they have the potential to be there, at least be in the mix. If not, then we all liked Toronto at the beginning. We all thought that Toronto could have a chance if their defense stepped up and if their goaltending stepped up. They have done that. They've shown brilliant flashes of that. But as of the last 10 games, not so much. Okay? So they faltered a little bit. And then the other teams that were so far behind have had the opportunity to catch up. So now you're seeing the teams like Winnipeg and Montreal and Edmonton.
Well, I think Toronto has the second, because if you look Winnipeg, like Pirlo and I talked about on his show, I feel like they have the most depth of these three. But Toronto at least you have a Joe Thornton on your team who's played less games, 23, has 12 points in 23 games. As a veteran, you have Kerfoot and Spezza as your third line. In Edmonton, you have guys like Ennis, Caden Haas, and Zach Cassian. Single-digit points. With line all has single-digit points. I think you need to get Yamamoto going more. News used to keep doing his thing. The Torres pickup didn't work out. So you probably need to trade for, like Pirlo said on his Twitter, I think it was on his Twitter, maybe one of his videos, but that they might need to get another center. That could be what they could add, a bottom two-line center. That would help their forward core maybe. But I think the team with the most depth is clearly when you look at the Jets now, because of what they've been able to do and how guys have been able to develop, how Stastny has been able to just integrate nicely with that first line, and how Mason Appleton, especially, along with Kopp and Lowry, have really come into their own as their third line this year. That's why I feel like, to me, they're the slight favorite to be able to win it. And then I think Toronto, just because they at least have – people complain about their scoring depth in Toronto, which it is a thing. They haven't been – their third line hasn't been scoring as much recently with the Spezza of the world and everything. But try to be Edmonton fans where your scoring is all three people and then sometimes Yamamoto chipping in.
Yeah.
Where
it makes it tough.
That chips in mainly otherwise. So I think I would go right now – Winnipeg leading. I would still say Toronto second, Edmonton third. And then I think Montreal is going to be one of the scariest fourth-place team if they can keep doing their thing coming into the playoffs, because they seem to be coming into their own. They added Eric Stahl to their team. So if they can kind of integrate him and do well, that was something they needed, I think, a veteran center. So I think they're moving in the right directions. But the Canadian division is going to be one of the most fun to watch, definitely rounding out the season. But before we close out the NHL, we have our very own division that Steel and I cheer for a team in, the Philadelphia Flyers, that are right now the fifth-place team, behind the Boston Bruins, who have 39 points to 38 points. The Flyers, though, have a minus 17 goal differential to the Bruins plus 10. And also the Rangers, who are behind us, plus 15 differential, even though they're in sixth place.
4 points back.
Yeah. So go figure how that works. Like Jason Martinez says, sometimes you just can't figure out how things work. But you have the Flyers were able to win a game. They got to win this next game against the Sabres in order to get in. But I think this division has just been most interesting because you had it reverse. All of a sudden you had Boston, you had us at the top. doing really good to start the season. Then everybody just flip-flopped. The Islanders started doing what everybody expected from the beginning, and they started playing catch-up and are now where everybody thought they should be. Everybody assumed Washington would still be good, especially bringing in Hank, and then you kind of had a little bit of weariness when Hank had the heart condition that now it seems like from his posts on social media, he's better.
Yeah, he's coming better.
Fantastic to see. Vanacek's really stepped up. So you got DC in first at 50. New York in second at 48, to tied in points with Pittsburgh in third at 48 and 39 for Boston. I would say the most surprising team probably of this division that's in it right now is probably Pittsburgh, just because of people they've lost and then coming into the season what we thought they would do. But I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on our division, but I feel like our division might be one in the top three, at least, that's pretty much hard to peg. Just like we said, the North Division's kind of hard to peg who's going to win that top spot if everyone keeps doing what they're doing.
Well, I had the Islanders pegged to win the East, and then it was a fight between Philadelphia and Boston and Washington for the remaining spots. Didn't think New York Rangers or the Jersey Devils or Buffalo would be even remotely considered, and I never thought that Philadelphia would be in fifth place on the outside looking in. The fact that Boston now has 3 games in hand on us, on Philadelphia, and then 5 games in hand on everybody else except for the Caps. The Capitals, getting Peter Laviolette as coach, I think is putting them over the hump for this year, because every time Ovechkin steps out on the ice, it's a record. Every time he scores, it's a record. Okay, they get Tom Wilson back from suspension, and this team has just been doing the right things at the right times all the time. They win the games they're supposed to win. They haven't. I mean, they only have 7 losses.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 7 regulation losses. They are 9-1-0 in their last 10 games. Okay, so I don't think anybody's going to catch Washington in this division unless the Islanders can. The
Islanders are the most likely because they're the most deep run defense through to offense team that can catch them, where Pittsburgh is still very impressive where they're at, but they kind of ended up going ahead of their game a bit. They really impressed when Hextall came in to kind of kick them in the butt because nobody wants to get traded. So now some guys really have started stepping up. Matheson, after starting off bad like he was in Florida recently, all of a sudden.
Let me float something to you.
Very good.
Yeah. Let me float something to you. How do you think about this? Yari and DeSmith as the best goalie tandem in March.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody expected that. Yeah, Tristan Yari, according to Cap Friendly, is one of the scratches right now is undisclosed injury.
Well, he left the game last night after the first period.
Okay, so hopefully, so for them, they'll have to hope he's okay. Otherwise, they have Emil Larmy as their other goalie who doesn't have experience with DeSmith, who's been performing this month. But a big reason for Pittsburgh has been their defense that didn't perform to start the season, all of a sudden has. And Matheson, who hasn't been good for a couple of years, has come back into his own, along with Cody Ceci, who's probably having his best season. Yeah. And then Pedersen, who performed poorly to start the season, now looks good. And then Marino's John Marino. So I think it's really their defense that we didn't think would be as good. Guys started performing well. That Olivier Joseph, who's really ready for the NHL, ended up getting pushed back to Wilkes-Barre, which is surprising because he really is ready for the NHL. So they ended up doing good in the 2 games he played. Radim Saorno looked good. He had a good goal in front of the net that they picked up as an undrafted kid out of the Czech Republic, who's a very big body, 6'6" kid that can get in front of the net and has a decent shot. So this team seems like a team that's definitely brought it together better than we thought. And
11 points ahead of Boston. Or, I'm sorry, 9 points ahead of Boston.
How a coaching change sometimes sparks a team. The GM change, knowing Hextall's a guy that moves people out if he doesn't think you're going to be part of the future core and performing, to start performing better and really get going. Now, there's a couple guys like Zucker who I still think they could maybe look to move out, who haven't been anything spectacular, and then maybe bring in other guys that they think fit in better and stuff of that nature. But it seems to be coming together. They just seem to me like the team, because of how well the Islanders are run both ways, and we really know they should have done that from the start of the season. They now have Hickey back to even add to their defense. A great story. Check out his story of some people in his family passing away, all the hardships he had to go through to work his way back. Now he's looking good as an extra piece. They just seem a little bit too much to surpass. So I feel like this division might honestly stay the way it is. You might just have Washington in first, keep the Isles in second, keep Pitt in third.
Yeah.
Hopefully Philly's able to make it up. But I think the two teams that have the best likelihood, if Philly doesn't make the right moves at the deadline, to come in fourth are not us. I think it's because they're honestly defending better, is New York or the Boston Bruins.
Right. I'm with you. I'm with you.
But
I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, though, because this division is so tight, and especially with the teams at the top, okay? And the way Washington's playing, and Pittsburgh has definitely been stepping it up. Boston's kind of hit a bit of a snag here where they had a little bit of a COVID issue, and then Pittsburgh just put Malkin on the IR.
Yeah, which is going to be big for them, but Boston's they're having a lot of young guys that streakily step up for them. That's not really a word it is now.
Streakily?
That step up for them at different times. So
this is a show full of technical terms, man.
Yeah,
so you're good. You're good.
I feel like Pittsburgh, who has more veterans, will be able to stay atop afloat, and then Boston will be the team most likely to come in fourth. I just think with how the Rangers have looked lately better than us, if the Flyers don't wise up, they're more likely to be the other team to compete with them than the Flyers are. They're looking better
the Rangers? The Rangers looking like they're going to be. Yeah, if they keep playing the way they've been playing.
And they also had a roster that some of us in the preseason video thought would actually be a surprising team.
And they are.
Did it.
Oh,
well, like a surprising team in terms of maybe actually making it. But for this week's episode, since we're already at 140, Steel told me, I apologize for our basketball fans, but baseball's starting, so we figured we should get to that. For basketball, I'll do some separate videos. I already did one on the Sixers on my channel.
I was just going to say, you know what? The basketball's getting started up here with the playoffs is coming soon.
Yeah, so next week we'll really divest more into basketball.
There you go.
Baseball, I think we got to get into. I already did on one thing my division predictions. I already have them written down, so I figure those would be fun things to go over and kind of go over what it's going to be here, and maybe go over some predictions for MVP, stuff of that nature.
For sure.
So on. But if we start in the American League East, we'll start with the East. When you look at them, you obviously have the Boston Red Sox, the Yankees, all those teams, the Blue Jays. I think with this division, with how well the Blue Jays have really added to their team once guys come back, because Ross Stripling is banged up to start the season, or not Ross Stripling, excuse me. Robbie Ray, the other R, is banged up to start the season for them, and he coming back. He's a pitcher that struggled last year, but I feel like in a ballpark that is kind of a combination of a pitcher, more of a probably to a pitcher's park and a gap hitter's park, but you can hit home runs there. I feel like could do solid out there in Toronto. I actually put them, which will make Pirlo happy, with their lineup additions of Marcus Semien and bringing in guys as well as Ross Stripling, Steven Matz, that's looked decent in spring with his movement and stuff to add. if these guys can do well, I think this team has the potential with the guys they added to finish second. Now, this is also due to the fact that the Rays traded away Blake Snell and did not re-sign Charlie Morton. So it's obviously not all entirely because the Blue Jays turned into the second coming of the Bowmans in baseball and brought in the best lineup. It's also because Boston ain't what the Red Sox used to be, but I put them in fourth when it came to the Red Sox, but I could see them being in third too, or even second, because the Red Sox are so hard to predict my second team because they're sucking one season like they did last year, and then come back the next season and be like, look at that, guys, we're amazing. And it's just not always explicable where guys, because their rotation right now is not the sexiest out of guys. They have Eovaldi, Richards, Perez, and Pivetta until guys like Sale and others are able to come back. So I feel like their pitching is going to hold them back. Where when it comes to a team like Toronto, I feel like Kirby Yates is obviously out for the season. But when it comes to their team, once a guy like Robbie Ray comes back, that's really going to help your team. Once a guy like Nate Pearson, one of the best prospect starters in baseball, comes back and can start after his groin strain, that'll really help them to be in second. The Red Sox, you need Richards, Perez, and Pivetta and Eovaldi to really step up in that rotation. I don't want to say love. I like their lineup with bringing in Kike Hernandez, Martinez, Bogarts, Devers, Renfroe, who they brought in this offseason. I like their lineup. Frenchie Cordero is a question mark for me because of his contact rate. But I think they're in fourth because they're still trying to get back to their glory of where they were and working their way back. I feel like the Rays are still a wild card because they brought back Chris Archer. They have Waka, who struggled big time last year, but has good movement. If anyone can get those two going and to stay healthy, it would be Tampa, who has brought in pitchers every year that they just pull out of nowhere and get going. So they're a question mark, but I think losing Sale and losing Morton is what drops them to third because they're a team that always relies on that staff and scoring clutch runs, where Toronto's lineup is a little bit more Twins-esque, where it's we can outbash you, so if we can also pitch against you, look out. So that's why I think they're in third. Boston's in fourth. The Jays are in second. And then the Yankees, if they can stay healthy, I mean, the Yankees are the Bronx Bombers. As long as the Yankees stay healthy, it's pretty much literally just health is their only issue. They're going to win the division. They brought in Jay Bruce, who, if he can still play well enough, is a solid player. Frazier's a good guy to start. They brought in Tyone. Germán's good. I think they're a team that's definitely going to be able to really cement themselves as the division winners. So Yankees, Jays, Rays, Red Sox, and Orioles in that order, who have some young guys that are fun to watch, but are definitely the fifth place team.
Okay, I got you. So it seems like this year is going to be a bit of a different year where they're not playing the full 162 games.
They actually are. No, they are playing 160.
They are. All right. So that's good. But they did start a little bit late.
They're starting, they're more starting where the normal season used to start, where a couple years ago they started it at the end of March. So it's really starting this year where a couple years ago it used to just start at the beginning of April. So it's kind of just going back to that. But the reason I also put the Yankees in first is I think Corey Kluber, if he can stay healthy, is going to be one of the biggest comeback pitchers of the year, along with Tyone, who they got from Pittsburgh, is now going to really have his Energizer Bunny going inside of him because he's on a competitive Bronx Bombers team and not the Pirates. No offense, Pittsburgh. But,
I'm with you. I'm with you.
That's why I think that's going to be very helpful for them, and I really like what I've been able to see there. And I think their bullpen's pretty good as well. So I think the Yankees are in first, but
even better, more so than, say, Tampa Bay.
Well, Tampa lost Sale and Morton. That's why I had them in third. I think the Jays in second, like I said, because I think their lineup is more comparable to just a bash you lineup like the Twins.
Yeah, okay.
Even if the pitching doesn't stock up, they'll be good enough in the regular season to be second in the division. Then we'll kind of see what happens in the playoffs, just like we tend to do with Minnesota.
Right. Okay,
I'm not if they make a wild card, they're going to do anything. But
Right.
I think they have a chance being in second to maybe make that. But this division also has a chance of just being a team where one team makes the postseason, depending how good the second place team is.
Okay. Yeah, that's so now do you think that so now with Tampa Bay, you think the Yankees are going to be there? You don't think Oakland's going to be of any kind of significance? You don't think
Oakland will be the West. So
okay. Okay. I mean, I'm just saying
in the wild card, if Oakland doesn't win the West, yeah, I feel like Oakland could be a team that would have a better chance, even if they're in third place in the West. They might, because of how good the West has a chance to be, have a better record than even Toronto being in second place in the East, just because of the differentiating of the divisions. So
right.
I feel like, yeah, the A's probably have a better chance to make the wild card than Toronto, but not by much.
Okay. All right.
But that's why, if we want to do that, we'll go over the AL first and then go into the NL. The AL West, that's actually where I had them, just because I think the Athletics are a team. I actually had them in third, but I feel like that division, if the Angels actually perform with the people they brought in, you have the Astros and Athletics. That's a division that has a chance for three teams to be able to get in if all guys perform, because we saw Ohtani in spring training is finally starting to perform like a hitter and a pitcher that's finally starting to come into its own. You have Trout, you already have Fletcher there, you brought in Rendon, you brought in Iglesias, who's one of the most underrated shortstop in baseball. The only position you need maybe is one more outfielder, since you don't have Calhoun anymore. Fowler's going to be in there. That's a spot you might want to look to fill. Bundy's look good. Heaney's look good. Ohtani, you brought in Jose Quintana. Cannon's a good young pitcher. Cobb's going to be in there if he can do something. You're going to have a six-man rotation. You might have to add somebody eventually, but I like what this team did. They were actually my surprise pick in OT. I'm going to stick with it. I actually surprisingly picked the Angels and Mike Trout to finally win a division and take the AL West crown, because I like how Stassi's one of the better callers of the back catcher and finally developed some hitting. That lineup looks good, and I think the pitching staff, with what I've read on Heaney and Bundy and how good Ohtani's look just from watching, is a little bit underrated, where, no, they don't have the best track records, but Bundy's looked to be coming back in his own as a former top prospect. Heaney's been healthy. If he could stay healthy, he has one of the best breaks on his pitches. I think they're going to look good, and I think Jose Quintana leaving Chicago, going to a new location is best for him.
So I give him a fresh start.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now I guess we move to the National League.
Well, when it comes to the second place team for that, I would have to go with the Astros, because you still have experience. So the AL West, I would say your second place team. Yes, you lost a guy like Springer, but you still got Brantley, you got Bregman, you got Alvarez.
But they haven't really played well.
The best prospect shortstop. They didn't play well last year, but they still made the playoffs, and then all of a sudden played well in the postseason. So I think they're going to ride off of more what they did in the postseason, where they were all caught in nonsense. What they did is not even cheating anymore because of rule changes, so it doesn't even matter. And their rotation is going to be good enough, I think, due to their lineup, to stay in second place, where the A's, to me, are going to be in a close third, but they're going to be Montes. They got Dalton Jeffries, who will probably be in that rotation. You got Luzardo, Mania, Bassett. They always rely on guys that they usually get the most out of. I believe in Luzardo and Bassett big time. I got to see what Jeffries is able to do in his first season, and Motas hasn't been impressive of late after he got caught doing some performance enhancement and coming back. Bringing in Lowry back, maybe that'll help you as a locker room guy. I don't know what he could do on the field as much anymore. I like them, but I think they're in third. But they're in third right on the behinds of the other two teams, because I predict the AL West to be one of the closest divisions in baseball between the top three. And then to round it out, you have the Mariners, who are going to have Kalinick, who might be the rookie of the year. but are going to be a team that's probably next year really looking to make their bigger push to be right in this top 3 rather than this year. They're still a year or 2 away. They're in 4th. And then obviously the Rangers, similarly to the Orioles, this is a pretty obvious 5th place team.
Okay. All right. Do you want to go to the
Well, we left one AL division, which I don't think we want to piss off the AL Central folks and say, well, what about our division? Do you just hate our division? Like, is our division just chocolate?
So,
but that's another division I have a surprising team, not necessarily in first, because I think most people are calling the Twins to win that division. If you look at the AL Central, just because they have going off of the coattails of their lineup, getting there, and then whatever the hell they do when they make the postseason, if they can win a game or not, they haven't in what seems like centuries, let alone decades. But if they seem like the team that'll make it.
They won the division last year.
They did, and then they didn't win in the postseason. So
right,
we need to figure that out. But I think they'll win the division. Maeda Barrios is a great developing pitcher. I think bringing in Shoemaker, who when healthy is a good 3 through 5 starter, and Jay Happ, who actually looked solid in a hitter's park last year in New York, will fit in well there. So I think you brought in some veterans. I think you helped your rotation based off of that in small bits. So I think that'll help you with your lineup to stay in first. My second place team, though, I think you got to reward them for the moves they were able to make. They acquired Andrew Benintendi, the Royals did, who's one of my favorite outfielders, come over from Boston. They have Hunter Dozier. They brought in Michael A. Taylor, who, if he can actually start hitting, is a Gold Glove potential. Kyle,
yeah,
the better prospect outfielders. He seems like he could be in their opening day lineup already. So Lairs looked great since going there, and they brought in Carlos Santana. So their lineup, as long as Isbell as a prospect hits well, and Taylor just really needs to field if everyone else hits well. But if he can hit some and stay in the lineup, is a brilliant fielder. Singer's a great prospect pitcher. You got Danny Duffy. You brought in Mike Minor as a veteran, who I thought was an absolutely brilliant acquisition. That's why I think Brad Keller's a good young developing pitcher. I think the Royals deserve credit for the moves they made and the prospects they have coming up. So I think they deserve to be touted as potentially, for me, who I think will be the second place team by the time it's all said and done in that AL Central, which would then leave another team that's improved well. I just have to believe it to see it, how an old school manager and Tony La Russa is going to do with the swag daddiness of the White Sox.
Going to be interesting to see that one.
There's a lot of swagger on that team for an old school La Russa to be their manager. You got Tim Anderson, who's one of my favorite players because of his swag. I don't know if La Russa likes that. Makata's a little similar. You got Robert. I like their team. I just have to see how that manager mixes in and how the bottom half of that rotation does. You brought in Giolito. Keuchel, his surface numbers and Lynn's surface numbers look good. Some of their inner numbers, it looks like they might be aging a bit, so hopefully they keep performing for you. And then Rendon and Cease is your 4 or 5. See how those guys do. They have a little bit of an older group. Their lineup is not as proven throughout, so I think that puts them in third place for me. But I think this is another division that you're likely similar to the West. Excuse me, I dropped the book. I had it in similar to the West. You're going to have a pretty close division.
Okay.
The Central, I don't see people. Most of the teams seem to rely more on their offense. The White Sox have the best rotation on paper, but Lynn and Keuchel aren't getting any younger. So gotcha. I think this will be close with the first 3 teams. And then it's Indians lost so many people, especially one of the best players in baseball in Lindor. They're going to take time to recover. They're being 4th. And then that obviously leaves it then for the Detroit Tigers, who are the odd team out, to be in 5th. So.
Okay. All right. There you go. All right, man.
Now we can quickly go to the
quickly.
If we want to do that.
Yes, we can. I just want to ask. I want to ask one question. Is Philadelphia going to have a decent team this year?
I think they'll have a decent team. Their division's just tough. Okay. I don't think it's going to be easy for them to make the playoffs, but will they be a team like I projected? I thought the A's, or I thought like the White Sox could be like in third, around above 500 by a few games, or at it, depending if all doesn't go well, or if all goes well, could they win it? Yeah, I think they are one of those teams because both the White Sox and A's I put in third place. Compared to the Rays, I don't think they fit as much into that category unless if some of the pitchers they brought in, like Waka and Archer, really turn back the clock. Those teams are teams that could either finish in third if what I think is going to happen happens with the question mark guys, or could go in first if all those question mark guys become definite.
Right.
So I feel like the Phillies could be the same, but I think the Mets offseason has just been far too ridiculous. I mean, you got an embarrassment of riches as pitchers there. You still got Yamamoto, who's not even squared in any of the rotation projections. You have Peterson, who they love. You brought in Lucchesi. You got Taijuan Walker, Stroman, DeGrom, Syndergaard when he comes back. So I think you're stacked there. You're stacked in the bullpen. Your lineup got stronger, bringing in James McCann at catcher. And Francisco Lindor, obviously, at shortstop, one of the best players in baseball, potential MVP candidate.
Right.
I think this team is clearly your first-place team, especially on paper coming in. And that would leave your second-place team to be the team that won it last year and has been doing good in recent years, the Atlanta Braves, where Freeman's coming into a contract year. I see him having a huge year. Ozuna's a great player. Pache, another young player, is going to get a chance to really take his onus as a center fielder, it looks. Excuse me. So I see them being in second. I like their lineup. I like Max Fried a lot. I like Ian Anderson a lot. And Kyle Wright pitched pretty decent in a playoff game last year. So if he can continue to develop, that would be good for them. And then they brought in Charlie Morton, good acquisition of Drew Smyly. So I like what they've done. I think they're in second. I think the Phillies or then that third place weird team where you don't really know exactly where they're going to go.
Yeah.
Because you like what you're seeing from guys, but you got Matt Moore and Anderson. They look good at the beginning of spring training, a little bit more bugaboo the last couple things. That's fine for fourth and fifth starters. But if you look at the rest of this rotations, like I said, the Mets is stacked. They got two other guys that could be in some other team's starting rotations as their sixth and seventh. And then if you look at the Braves, they're stacked. They got Fried, Morton, Anderson, Smyly, and Wright, as well as Mike Soroka. So they got a lot of guys there as well. The Phillies don't have that embarrassment of riches. So I think they're going to need the guys like Anderson and Moore to really perform. You're going to need something out of Spencer Howard at some point. And you're going to need to see how the center field question mark, where the other two teams don't have a question mark in their lineup, solves itself. So that's kind of why I put them in third. They have more of the question mark. And the same kind of goes hand in hand with the Nationals, where Corbin didn't perform as well in D.C. Strauss has been banged up. You got Joe Ross and Lester as your 4 or 5. Lester's really just been an innings eater, not a performer anymore. What are they able to do? That's why I have them in fourth, because more of their pitching rotation. What are they going to be able to do 3 through 5? When Corbin, I've always liked his entire career, but since going to D.C. has not impressed me. So that's why I have them in that spot. And then that obviously would leave the Marlins, who I think will be probably the best fifth-place team in baseball coming off of what they did last year, but still will go back down. They're still a couple years away.
Okay.
I like their attitude that team has, but you still have Nedart, Rogers, Hernandez. A lot of these guys still need to learn how to fully pitch in the majors. So I think it's going to take them a bit. And Jazz Chisholm is just becoming a starter. It's going to take them a bit. But that's what I would have for the NL East. The NL West, though, just because that one's something we can go over. I don't think that one should take all too long. You got the embarrassment of riches.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, this is where the World Series team came out of. This is where the Dodgers came out of this.
Yeah.
Can they repeat? Can they repeat? I mean, you obviously think the Yankees are going to be there, but and then you also have you think that potentially Atlanta's going to be there. The A's might be there. I mean, Do you think that the Dodgers are going to be able to be
Dodgers
there?
have a chance to repeat. Yes, I think they do. It's just going to be interesting because the Drays have obviously built, who I think is going to come in second. The Dodgers will come in first. A great team to try to compete with them. It's just the Dodgers have so much money. It's ridiculous. They got
Right.
7 guys that could be in a rotation.
Right.
The rotation will probably be Mayurias, Bueller, Bauer, and Kershaw going from bottom to top. And their lineup is ridiculous. So I think they're going to be absolutely bonkers. I feel like a team that's going to show improvement to be in third place, to kind of have guys come into their own. Merrill Kelly will still be a good veteran. To see Luke Weaver really be able to do his thing. I feel like the D-backs, Kelly will continue to do it. Walker will be their team MVP. They have a chance to be in third place and impress some people as that around 500 scrappy team you didn't expect. But they're being a pretty distant third. I think this division's a two-way race between the Dodgers and the Padres. That's for darn sure. They're being a distant third. The Giants will then be the fourth place team, I believe, and the Rockies kind of moving on into this retool mode will be the fifth place team. But the Drays, they're the only team that has a chance to compete with the Dodgers for the division. Right. And we'll have to see if they do with brought in Darvish and Snell, which was great. They got Morahone as a great young pitcher. Paddock, Musgrove. They got a bunch of guys out there that can just throw the ball. And Gore, McKenzie. Well. So they got all these guys. They're going to be in second, right on the Dodgers' coattail. Yeah. That's how I would say Dodgers, Drays, D-backs, Giants, Rockies for that division is definitely how it would be. I think when it comes to an MVP projection, I think just because of the battle of those two teams, you're likely to see the MVP be on the Dodgers or the Padres for the NL, just because those two teams are going to be battling each other so much. Those two guys, I think it's going to honestly be between a guy like maybe a Tatis and a obviously for the Dodgers would probably be Mookie Betts. I could see those guys kind of battling it out. I could see Tatis maybe after his contract trying to prove it and win the MVP here. So I would say he could be the guy. But real quick, as we go over the Central, for that one, I had the Brewers, Cardinals in second, Cubs in third, Reds and Pirates are obviously in fourth. The Reds just didn't do as good last year when we thought they would be better. Now they're losing. Right. So I think they fall down a bit. The Cubbies are also in this kind of retool mode, not really knowing where they're at. The Cardinals are a team that I really like the additions of what they made, bringing in Nolan Arenado and everything. But I feel like the Cardinals are still going to need like Ponce de Leon and John Gant are questionable. Their fourth and fifth starters are some of the most questionable to me. Well, I really like Freddie Peralta. I think he can be a solid guy. Hauser. It's going to be interesting how the pitching staff of the Brewers is able to do just from watching those guys' highlights and movements from stuff I've seen on MLB TV and MLB Network and stuff. I like the potential of their stuff. So that's why I put them in first, but I could very easily see the Cardinals being in first in this division. I think it's just between those two. Okay. It's going to flip-flop between those two. So that's how I had the divisions lined up. We thank you all for joining this week as a very risky World Series projection. Since I projected the Angels to get in, I projected them to make trades in season. I think they're strengthening their pitching staff.
Oh, here we go.
And the Padres will be in there. So the Dodgers will win the division, but the Padres will best them. If someone else beats them, they're good for the Padres.
Right.
If they need to beat them in the playoffs, they're best them. So I took Drays in 6. Against the Angels. So that will be the early World Series prediction. But we thank you all for joining this Sports Phanatic News Sportscast, where we went over a little bit, but sometimes you got to go your full 142 instead of your full 42,
We'd also like to thank our sponsors, www.cccresorts.com. We really appreciate all the work that they do for us, and we're trying to help them out by telling you to go to their website, check out their facilities. They got great daycare and all kinds of great things. So really appreciate y'all checking it out. Please hit the like and subscribe. Thank you all very much for watching.